Hey, well, welcome to the Dream Labs, the Dr. Contrast Live. And hey, Cam Northman, it's good to have you on board. Long time no hear from you, and I hope all is good. And if you have a minute to kind of join us on streams here, on the stream today, really great to have you on board. So just going to bring up the speed a little bit here. Over the last few days, it's really been interesting how some of the individuals that are tuning in and some of the messages I'm getting had to do with a lot of structural stuff. And I don't want to make this into a structural engineering program this afternoon about what we're going to go through and what we're dealing with. But the last stream I put together on was really interesting. It was all about light source. And I think a lot of individuals have a hard time dealing with light source. So where is it? How do you work with it? How do you cast a shadow? How do you break down a surface and make it look believable and the like? So I thought a good compliment today, we would go through a series of things in terms of putting together circles of perspective and hopefully debunk the whole rumor about what we're always used to hearing about, gee, it's an ellipse. No, it's not an ellipse. I won't get into that now, but maybe later on we'll kind of dedicate some time to it. But I just really feel honor bound, in fact, to let you know that an ellipse is not problem at all. It's the situation is circles of perspective. It comes around very much around the building block of a cube, where you break down the face of a cube and begin to find major and minor axes and the like, and begin to generate the circle around that. So I'm going to go through a three-step process here today, Cam North. And if you have any questions, feel free to slow me down and stop me. If you have any questions and the like, I want to go through three things. I want to introduce it, then I want to explain it, and then I want to show you how the application, how it begins to function, with maybe just a couple little quick skits. Hey, Chip, how are you, man? It's good to have you on board. How are you? Thanks so much. And again, I certainly don't want to make this into a geometric little conversation, but I want to show you how this thing begins to come together and hopefully debunk the myth about this ellipse thing. And I'll show you the difference in a few moments here about the beginning application or explanation of how this begins to really hang us up and can become extremely critical. And I've seen, let me just preface this by saying this. I do a lot of portfolio reviews for transportation design, architecture, product design firms and the like, and it really, it's just heart-wrenching to see kids coming in or young talent coming in with this whole misconception about how to develop round forms or organic shapes. And so again, I want to make a real solid statement here today about how this thing has been, how you build it, how do you begin to manufacture it, and how do you begin to apply it. So let me just kind of go back. This little page I put together, a few little sketches before we started here today. Notice, face of a cube, really critical. It's a square, that's all it is. Now, the debunking part is sometimes will tell us, some publications, for example, or individuals, I remember those lines, hey, good deal. That's funny, Chip. So the idea behind it all is just interesting. Most of the publications will tell you this. Well, to find that to make an ellipse work, find the major axis and the minor axis, and then begin to generate that circle around that major axis, the longer of the two. That's completely false. And I want to go back through this thing today here, and I'm going to use this page to explain some things. Then we're going to actually apply it and show you how it all begins to function and take it from there. So this is how you set up. The major axis will always refer to itself as being vertical. That's orientation. That tells you where you are. And the next one is the minor axis will give you direction. That goes right back to the horizon line. And then the third one we'll work with a little bit later on. It's called rotation. That's how that gives it the rotation, and the axle is what causes that. And that goes back to a vanishing point as well. So all these pieces come together to make a real solid statement in creativity. And I'm a firm believer that they all come to, the whole synergy of this whole process comes together with everything. Light source, line weight, volumetrics, it's all part of the process. And if we ignore one against the other, our work is extremely suspect. So let's go through the process here. Obviously, horizon line, and in one point perspective, notice you have a central vanishing point. Those drive lines come up. You create the base of a face of a cube on the ground plane, find its center, generate the circle, and go from there. Same thing in one point perspective here. If we tighten it up a little bit and move it closer to the horizon line, again, central vanishing point, the drive lines, look at that face. There's the face again of that cube on the ground plane that begins to settle that whole process of developing a circle, which now gets into, notice, contact point, contact, 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 and you generate around that and you're on your way. Another example in one point perspective. Moving the central vanishing point off to our right, you come back in now a little bit closer to the horizon line, same thing, drive lines, but now look at the frame you're working with there. That is the face of a cube on the ground plane, under which you begin to find the center, the major axis, the minor axis, and then rotate again. Notice, look where the contact points are. There, there, and there. Keeps it nice and solid and keeps it stable as you begin to go through the drawing process. Now, 2-point perspective, again, horizon line, facing plane. You get this into place here. Here's your leading edge, central vanishing point. Same process. You find that the face of that cube. You find its perspective center. You go major axis vertical, just like we're showing you here in this illustration. And you go minor axis right back to horizon line. In this case, vanishing point right. And now this sets up the direction. That tells me where the orientation is. And you generate that circle around that face. Notice when I lay that plane down, same process here in 2-point perspective. Drive line, pick it all up on the ground, face of a cube on the ground plane. And again, notice major axis, minor axis. That major axis will rotate right around the entire face of that cube. It stays static all the way around there and remains consistent. That's what happens with that process. And when you lay it down on the ground, there it is, same process. Contact to contact to contact, contact. It's a little sloppy, but there it is. And that really keeps it solid. And again, you'll see in a few moments here how this is so vital for us when we begin to look at drawings and so forth, especially the more compound forms we get into. The more you understand how circles work, believe me, the stronger it's going to get. And if anybody any questions there, Chip or Cam North, let me know, and I'll stop here and explain some things here. So far, so good. I'm going to go ahead here, and I'll just kind of wait for your commentary as we kind of rambling on here. This is an isolated plane in perspective, same process here. Again, central vanishing point, we can right back into, just a vanishing point, pardon me. Come back in, drop it through, create the face of a cube. Again, find its perspective center, and come right back in and begin to generate the major axis and the minor axis, which in this case is right on the horizon line, and then you begin to generate that circle around that. So there was phase one. I just wanted to put that little bit of, we're still going to go through a little bit of an introductory process here. So this is phase one, introducing the whole principle of circles and perspective. All good for me. Let's see, Cam North. I've been following along on YouTube. So much a break. Hey, very cool. Very good, Cam North. Neat. So let's kind of get rid of this guy. Phase two, I won't spend a lot of time here. This is going through a series of exercises, really illustrating how critical it is to find where those contact points are. Again, 2-point perspective, how to generate cylinders using that same cube as a format, standing it upright and then laying it down, finding the same process as we go through this thing, and really begins to make a huge difference in putting it all together. And again, notice the major axis. This would, again, this would be the axle here, major axis, minor axis, major axis, minor axis, major axis, minor axis. I'm repeating that because it's so much in terms of strength to kind of keep our sketches solid and to put it all together. And I'll show you again in a moment how that all, we're going to build as we go through the process. So sketch 2, another little bit, just another little variation on theme here. Looking at some very different, if you incline the plane or really cant the cylinder, in a case like that, you create the same geometry. It's still going to be the face of a cube, and again, find the majors and minors, and then crank the circle out of that thing in perspective correctly. Again, conical form, same process. Here's the volume it sits in, and you break it down by doing the same. Again, the following, major to minor, finding it through. And if I were to connect the dots here, there's my axle going through this, so we can spin a whole series of circles off of that guy as well. Truncated cone here as well, and another variation on theme, being a little bit more lightheaded in terms of getting it all together. So let's do this. Let's take you through the process here in a moment, and we'll just kind of crank on some sketches as we go. So thank you for your patience, and here we go. We're going to come right back in here. The first thing I'm going to do is just set up the face of a cube here. Let's kind of go back and do this. Let's get this into play. I'm going to do a little bit of comparison here, just a little bit of explanation. So I've got the face of that cube down. Next thing I want to do is find the perspective center. There it is. There it is there. And there it is there. That point of reference right there will give me a huge gold mine. That's my perspective center. Now from there, I'm going to come in and go back to black pen here. Pardon me as I rotate the pad just a little bit. Come back in there and go right through vertically, and call that my major axis. Now, if I were to project this out and chase this thing back to the horizon line, I'm taking that minor axis right back to it. This is now my major. This is now my minor. Very interesting approach to look at. That gives me the contact I'm interested in. I want that point, that point, that point, and that point. And I'm going to come back in here. Now, for those of us who are right-handed, I always recommend rotate the paper, not necessarily rotate it, but from the shoulder, go counterclockwise. And it really helps to do this. It's a little simple little thing to work with here. Interesting thing. Come back in and rotate from there, and just rotate, and bring it in. so that all those points in reference are there. Look how that thing just stands upright, and again, by rotating it counterclockwise. If you're left-handed, you rotate it clockwise. When it comes from the shoulder, I always look at it from the point of view of see it, and then strike it. And that gets down to a situation where you start doing this. You can start to look at exercises where you begin to move around that thing, and all of a sudden your hand-eye coordination becomes so much more powerful because you begin to see what this stuff looks like. You can see it automatically. You begin to look at the point that you already know that that face of the cube exists, but you're breaking into it and sketching through it, and it's just a huge difference. Now, let me show you the lie. And this is, again, part of the explanation. This really is a disturbing set of circumstances. This is what you'll hear. You'll see this. Same scenario. Let's create that face of the cube. Let's get that all set up. Now, this is what they tell us. And please, I want to be very careful. I'm not criticizing or throwing stones at individuals who are proposing this to individuals, especially the student bodies or professional staffs. I'm not throwing stones at that at all. I just think it's a shame it's never discussed. I've been in workshops and clinics where you go through this explanation of correct circles and perspective, how it's built, what the majors and minors are, and I've had people just break into tears about being lied to because they lived this lie about the ellipse for so long. It's an absolute folly. So let's do this. Here's what happens. When you see this, now the first explanation is, let's do this, then let's do this. And many times they'll tell you the longer of those two lines become your major axis. Then this becomes your minor axis. Now, when you look at that, and then all of a sudden they tell you to rotate that circle or that ellipse around that major axis, which is now going to look like this. Let me use a blue pen here. It's not going to look like this. You tell me. Look where the contact points are. Does that look suitable to you? Not at all. That whole thing is distorted. Now, if you look at this from the point of view of okay, how do you debate this? How would you, if someone comes up to you and says, wow, yeah, very crooked, it distorts, it just drops. Whether you go right or left, the same phenomenon is because you're not honoring the fact that that's a major is always going to be vertical and the minor is going to be horizontal. It goes right back to vanishing point. That's not my treatise. That was discovered by Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo. All those guys work with this process. They developed that two-point perspective, atmospheric perspective. They knew what was going on, and they debunked it back then. Yeah, messed up is right, Chip. You got it. So let's look at this for a second here. Here's my, whenever I'm confronted with this in a workshop or working with a firm, for example, someone will tell me, for example, this is how I believe it. Well, if that's true, I'm going to ask you a very critical question. Where does your minor axis go? Because according to the rules of geometry, what happens here, if you have a horizon line down, and I'm just going to go through a series of sketches here. If you have a horizon line down, and you begin to build a cube, so to speak, in that frame of references, and you start to build this, and you put it all together, and develop that cube, first of all, sitting there, small little sketch, hope you can see it all right. Yep, okay, good. Let's kind of break this down. There's the cube. If that's the truth, the real truth is the fact that here's VP and there's VP. Here's where I'm standing, my central vanishing point. If that's truth, then what you're telling me is this, that line there, which is now major, and this line now is major, according to geometric law, that whole process, that the minor axis must go back to, with a black pen, that minor axis must go back to vanishing point, in this case right, or in the other aspect of it, vanishing point left. It can't go nowhere in space. Look what that thing's doing. It's going nowhere, which accounts for the whole process of being really disturbing and then totally being a fabricated lie. The other thing I want to look at is this. I hope I'm not going too quickly. I just want to get to the application side of it here so you see how it all functions. This is overwhelming to me because I see it all the time and it just does not function. It comes back to this. Every time you go through that process, let's go through this for a second here. Look at this. When you open it up, then you find that perspective center. Now you're working with a whole different set of circles. This is now B12 stuff here, man. There you are. Now I come back in again. This now becomes my major axis. It's vertical. Now that minor is going right back to VP. I find a contact there, 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 and there, and I rotate that circle in place. Bam, there it is. Look at the context. It's standing upright. It's not leaning. Overwhelming. That's too big. I was going to do a little variation on the theme on the right-hand side of this little face here, but not going to work. But anyway, there's enough there, for example, to tell us. Here's another aspect of it here. This is why this is how. Let me explain something here again. I'm still trying to get through the explanation here. It's an axonal ellipse. Yeah. Here's what happens here. Now, that ellipse, Chip, it's not an egg, it's an ellipse. Here's what happens here. That came about as a result of this. You have a shape called an ellipsoid, which is a geometric solid. Now, if I draw through that geometric solid and on the horizon line, or the vertical, there it is. There it is in the horizontal. There it is in the horizontal. And there it is here. Now, if I go back the other way, here's its construct. Now, we don't know until we put that in a form that this is a geometric solid. Let me just kind of beef that up a little bit. It's now, this is its horizontal, and this now becomes its verticals. Now, ironically speaking, those are all circles. But because that's an ellipsoid, this line came about because of this. They now take a plane and ran a frustrum through this thing, or a plane, and cut through it. They drive a plane right through that shape, and they get a piece here, 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 and here. And then they do this. That results in that. See how that fit? Margush, 91. Hey, Jeff, how are you? We were always taught that the minor axis is the axle when doing wheels. Is that not correct? That is not correct, Jeff. The minor axis is only a vehicle or direction point that goes back to horizon line. This is what, I'll get to that in a moment. Once again, let me make sure I got your question correctly here. From Jeff Marcus, it's cool to have you on board, Jeff. Thank you. We were always taught that the minor axis is the axle when doing wheels. That is incorrect. Totally incorrect. The minor axis will come through here. If I come back to this other setup here, let's use this sketch here. If I come back to minor axis here, this now becomes my axle right here. That's a different drive line altogether. It'll be a part of the minor axis, but it's really called more of an axle than it is a minor axis, because it can be confusing out here. So I think, does that help, Jeff, or not? Let me stop there for a moment. This is really great conversation, gang. Hopefully that works. What do you think, Jeff? Making sense? Everybody else good? Chip? Cam North? Hope I'm not going too quickly here. Making sense? Going back again to Jeff's commentary, I think the key thing is that axle comes right through the perspective center of the circle you're dealing with. Following along, very cool. That's great. Everybody see how this myth comes along here? Look at this. All of a sudden, you've got that. Here's another approach as to why this becomes a lie. Now I'll look at it from up here. This whole thing becomes a lie because in solid geometry, this does this. You've got a rectangular form into which an ellipsoid is generated, and it looks like this. Now, if I were to break that down into 4 quadrants, it's center line, center line. Notice that secant is equal to that secant, which is equal to that secant, equal to that secant. Those are all equal. Bear with me. Look at this. Let's use a sketch. I've already got started here. Look at the variation in theme here. Let's go back to this circle. Look at the amount of space here. Let's tin this in. Look how much space is there. And again, look how that diminishes here. Look how the space changes. It's not equal. Equal, equal, equal. Every one of those negative spaces are equal. So therefore, oh, I'm just here enjoying the ride. Hey, very cool. I think so. 30 years of thinking up in no. No, it's not up in smoke, Jeff. The application, the conversation was correct, but the theory is wrong. The application should be that axle is coming right through the perspective center. And yeah, it could become a minor axis, but it's be careful. That minor axis is on the surface. The axle is through the center. Big difference. And I'll show you that in just a few moments here. So everybody understand how it works? Look at this. Let's do this. This is all equal here. Those 4 quadrants are equal. But in true perspective with a circle, that diminishes. It's greater, less than. Greater, less than. It rotates and changes. And the more extreme you get, let's use this one. Look at this guy. We tighten that up. Look at the amount of space here. And look at the amount of space here. Look at the difference in scale here. Amazing. That's what gives you the illusion of depth. That's what's really interesting. So, do we still line our arm up with the axle when sketching the, yep, not the ellipse, the circle. The circle, not the ellipse. Be very careful, because that ellipse is out here. That's equal, Jeff. You can't do that. That's an absolute violation of perspective. So my point is, and let me stop there for a minute. Does that help to clarify that, Jeff? I'm going to make sure these questions are answered carefully here. Does that help, Jeff, or not? Yeah, aha, very cool. Aha. So do we still line our arm up with the axle when sketching the ellipse? Yeah, circle. Again, ellipse is if you did that, for example, if I were to line up my arm with that perspective center or the axle through here, then that ellipse would still do this. It's the circle. Now you're going the other way. You're generating that against, you're going from here to there, there, and there. It changes the entire orientation around that. That's the difference, Jeff. So very cool. Let me move along here. Am I doing okay here, gang? I mean, I hope I'm not going too quickly. I mean, I really felt after the last 2 streams, I got a lot of conversation coming in by telephone, notes, and so forth, and emails on my Twitch account, and especially on YouTube, about questions about things like light source and ellipses and circles, and what's the real truth here. So I thought I'd just take a moment and pull back again and spend some time today going into lesson 2 in terms of, on Tuesday it was light source and how that functioned, hopefully, and then again, just to complement that, what the circles begin to do in terms of generating the whole idea. So are ellipses templates not accurate when no, they're accurate, Jeff, but again, they're built on the fact that the template side is built on the truth of the fact that they're working with this system right here. But what I'm referring to is like in SketchUp and design schools and some of the programs we've seen, and you're an experienced individual here as well. In the academic side of it, this theory is taught all the time. It's just really false. So the idea behind the circle templates are much more in truth with this guy. So and when you use those to tighten them up, that's great because they're following that truthful side of it. Does that make sense? Hopefully. This is academically false. This in the circle template they're working with, they're much more in line with what we're dealing with here because they follow that same axis. Or that same theory, that same concept. Oh, very good. Super. Let me move along here. So far, so good, gang? I'm going to show you a little platform study here. Let's kind of put that to rest. Let me stop here for a second for all of you. And again, I really appreciate you guys tuning in here for this little conversation. I know going into today would not be easy, and it never is easy, but I want to make sure that we clarify this stuff and keep it nice and still have fun with it and still enjoy the fact that we understand the principles. And if we understand that, then the principles will keep us. There's no question about that whatsoever. So let me just get a fresh sheet of paper here, and we'll just start cranking as we go here. And I'm going to get this one out of the way. That one here. I'll use this. I'm going to come back to these in just a moment. And we're going to wrap some things up. I just want to get out of the picture here for a moment. Now, let's go back and look at this. Let's say we set up a platform here. Let's say we go, let's do it right from square one. Let's set up a horizon line. And I'll keep the sketch pretty lucid here. Let's say we set up a horizon line. And let's do this. Let's set up a VP and a VP. Now let's set the frame up here. If I come back in and pick a height, I want you to see something here in perspective with circles that really becomes really critical, especially for those in architecture or transportation design or even product design. We don't see this very often, and I think it's really critical. So there's my frame of reference. Let's tighten that up a little bit. And here's my leading edge. And there's my central vanishing point. This is where I'm standing. VP on the left side, VP on the right side. Here we go. Now let's set this thing up. Let's get this down to a science here. I'll come down the measuring line, crank this over, come back to CVP, pick up that same face right there. There's face number 1. Now a little trick here is this. Find the perspective center. Now we're going to apply this thing. All set? There's my perspective center. Now take that line right there, that intersection, right back to vanishing point. Everybody good? There we are. Now, next step. I'm going to count back, maybe a wheelbase of maybe let's say 4. All right? So here I am. I'm going to come down this corner to that intersection and come back in and do the following. 1. Back again, corner, intersection, 2. Once again, corner, intersection, come through, and drop it. There I am right there. That's 4 back. All set? Now, we're going to show you a real unusual phenomenon here that we don't really see, and I think it's critical, especially for anybody in transportation design, any discipline. We're always drawing the same circle here that we see back here or back here. It never happens. It all collapses or begins to fade. So bear with me here. Now that I found that, I'm going to rotate. This is my major axis. And for Jeff's benefit, there's my minor axis. And here is the key. This is now going to be my axle right here. This I'm going to spin or generate. This is now axle. Everybody good? Here we are. So here I am. There I am. Those 4 points. Now I'm going to go back in, rotate. Circle number 1. There I am. All set, gang? Now I'm going to come back to this one. Same process. Find the perspective center. Come back. Major axis. Fall on the minor axis. And again, rotate. Interesting, huh? Now, what happens is simply this. Notice, if this circle here, let's say, is 30 degrees, as you go back in space, this circle back here where you end up always drop back to 10. So now this becomes a 20-degree ellipse. It fades. It thins up a little bit, and it begins to fade. Interesting magic here. How do you find the proportion of width? No problem. You come back again. You find the other face of the cube. Open it up. Come back to minor axis. Roll that through. Same process. This corner to this corner. Run it through. Again, drop it in. Same process again. Here to here, to here. Again, same process, drive it through. Stop it, and then drop it right there. Now, here's the trick. Typically, transportation systems, overall width about maybe I've been doing it right, just terminology. No, yeah, you're right, Jeff. And again, don't misunderstand. I'm not criticizing your approach at all. You've been doing it right, but the terminology has been really kind of whacked out of shape there a little bit, but you got it. No problem, sir. Most transportation systems, let's go back to this application here. If you have a wheelbase, let's say it's 4 back, let's say that's about 120 inch wheelbase from there to there, right? Most widths are 60 to 65 inches. So how do I find that? No problem. If this is a 30 inch, or let's say 25 inch tire or cube, then this becomes, let's do this. Take this back, center line, a lot of construction here, so forgive me. So there's 1, 25, 50, cut this guy in half. There's my overall width right there. That is my width for a typical vehicle. So let's drop this back. Let's show you what this does. Let's kind of build the rest of the frame here. That does that. I'm going to finish this up a little bit and I'll harden up just a minute here. When I draw through this thing, look what begins to happen. What I want you to see is how this tire, or this circle, solid. Look how pinched it is. As I come over here, look how much that thing opens up. Look how that thing just rotates open. Does that make sense, gang? Let me stop there for a moment. A lot of stuff here. Very interesting how it all begins. Now again, notice what happens is this. Now that I find my perspective center and I've got run that through, here's my width. It's 25, 50, 60 inches roughly. And again, wheelbase here, roughly about 120. Typical width to the width, and then typical length. But what I want you to notice is this. Look how tight that circle here is and how much that opens up, which means this backside, if this is 30, that diminishes by 20, then this one is going to increase by 10, and this is going to be a 40-degree circle, 30-degree circle. What about the backside one? Let's draw through it here. Sorry for the line. Let's draw through this thing. That means that this backside system will fall in line and be the same as this one on the rear side of this guy. We'll come back in. That this backside circle here will be the same as this one because it's almost in line visually. So that's 30 degrees, 30, 40, 30, 30, 20. Look at the difference here. That help? Look at that. Gang just breaks that right up. It's cool. Helping? All right, let me move along here. Now that I've got a plane of reference to work with here, let's kind of isolate this guy by doing this. Then I come over and I draw through and I get that facing plane in place. I'm going to find its perspective center. Now that I've got that, I'm going to use that as a point of reference to extend this thing up. Now, let's do this. Round surfaces. Let's put a shell on this guy. I won't finish the sketch, very scratchy here. There's a loose sketch. See how that worked? Helping, gang? Let me isolate that just for a moment. Once you find, let's just kind of isolate this guy a moment. This is now the application of what all these circles begin to do for us here. Once you know what that geometry is doing, you can give it a look at. I find the center line of that cylinder, extended the nose cone out, and I create a circle up on top of that hood line that gave me the depth I needed out front. I can come back in here now. Let's do this. And add this. I can add that across. I can change the character of this upper or this nose cap here by coming back in and putting some graphics into it. Now that becomes a guide for everything I need to know. There it is. I mean, it's all there as a result of knowing what those circles do. Incredibly intense. I hope I'm doing okay here, guys. This helps a lot. I always loved car sketches. I'm going to give this. Yeah, that's really cool. Let's do this. Let me help you here. Now, let's kind of isolate this thing. Let's do a little simple thumbnail here. I'm going to put the circle down, give myself a drive line, and a drive line. Take it, count 4 back. 1, 2, 3, and 4 back. There I am. I'm going to take a drive line in the other direction, open that up, and go 1, 2, 3.5. So there's my width right there. With all that structure, that's what they're dealing with. Helping, gang? Now let's kind of put a center line through this thing. Let's put a center line through that. Now notice, that tangent right there and the circle, it now becomes a cylinder. There's my center line tangent right there. Let me stop right there, gang. So far, so good? Boy, this has been helpful. You guys have been great as far as communication going back and forth. Really been really helpful. Good? Now, let's say you want to do a very organic round form like we did here without all the geometry in it. Here's what I did there. When I created that plane up on top, I literally saw this. Base of a cube, but canted on an incline. That help, gang? When you get to concentric circles in perspective, I have, yeah. Here we go. Let me do this. There's the far side tire. Here's the near side wheel. There's my wheelbase. There's my far side wheel. But no, notice what I did. I took that whole thing and I'm going to create a round form out in front here. Now, here's what I'm going to do. I just took that to get that round shape up on top. Now, I'm going to draw into that thing. Here's my minor axis. Here's my major axis. I'm going to rotate that thing like this. I just found my perspective center right here. Up to the wheel, back in body form, and the shape. Back to center line, back to shape. I can add to it. Come out of it. Lift it up. Change the character. Add lamping. Add lamping. Rearview mirror. Rearview mirror. Body form. But notice, let me stop right there. See how that worked, gang? Helping? Same set of principles here, but I just opened it up by using, again, that whole process of finding out where the whole purpose of today's stream is to use the surfaces of a cube, face of a cube, to develop surfaces that are correct. Let me stop there, guys. Let me get some feedback from you. I hope I'm not going to, is this helping? I hope. Give me a shot, one yay or nay here. If I'm going too quickly, I'll slow it all down. I'll get to that concentric circles in a minute here, Jeff. When you get I'll come back to that in just a second. Let me just show you again. That plane right there in dark blue pen, helped me open up to find out where that perspective center was on that round form, and that gave me the idea of putting, let's do this in red. That circle right there set up the geometry for the front end of that car. Now I can come back in and add a little bit of color graphics to this thing. I can start adding more detail to this. Lamping graphics, and just start, now let's go to this. I can come back inside here. Why is that working? Let's do this. Base of the cube. Axle. I'm going to come back in, come back out, go back in. That whole thing is driving what that surface is doing. Now let's go back to this. Put a shadow on this guy. Again, same drive line. Back out, back in. Contour, tone. A little bit of graphics in this thing. Real quick little thumbnail sketches on how to apply that whole circle phenomenon. Boy, I hope this has helped, gang. I'm going to stop there. I don't want to go too quickly here because I keep trying to watch the screen, and if any questions are coming up here. And I'm not going to go any further until I get a yay and amen, or else, thumbs up or thumbs down. Has this been helpful about how to explain this whole process of this system and how it's absolutely vital to begin to look at that? Let me put these up together here. How to begin to utilize this whole principle into that process. Chip, hang on, got to get more popular. Hey, save some for me, Chip. That'll be great. Okay, Jeff, I'm going to ask you a question while you're still with us. And if the case, when you get to concentric circles of perspective, I have a question. Okay, what is it? What's your question, Jeff? I'm ready to roll here. Make sure we get to you. Well, thank you, Jeff. I mean, that's what it's all about. If you've got a great foundation, you can build any empire you choose to, and I think that's the difference in what we're doing here today. And again, I'm only getting to the point here today because a lot of conversation over the last week or so has been about these very simple, fundamental things. I don't mean that simple to be trite, but powerful stuff that make a huge difference. So what do you think? What's your question, Jeff, about concentric circles? While you're at it, let me get a fresh sheet of paper so I can address it as we go through the line here. So are you having a hard time with concentric circles, how to guide them? Or I doubt that, but let me make sure that you've got here, Jeff. So far, so good. Well, while you're going through that process, let me show you a little trick again about maybe it's something that you're going to do from an architectural perspective, and then let's just kind of do a couple little thumbnail sketches here. And then we'll kind of wrap it up as we go here. If I come down a ground plane, my horizon line here, and I create, I'm going to eliminate, I think, some of the stuff. If the front tire is, say, 50 degrees, is the wheel still at 50 degrees? Yes, it is. the wheel will still, it'll maintain that whole concentric all the way in and out, Jeff. Now let me isolate that. Let me go back to this page here. Now you're referring to this. If you come back concentrically, if you're referring to this, Jeff, if you're coming up with a 50 degree circle here out front, and your drive line is there, and let's just kind of frame this in. If that becomes your reference point, and then here's your major, minor, there's your circle, and if that's 50 degrees and your axle's coming through that, then everything inside, on front of that, 50 degrees. Inside that, 50 degrees. Outside that, 50 degrees. There it is. Helping, Jeff? Because when you tighten stuff up with templates, it looks like a bit odd when you say, yeah, it does, but that's still true. You could cheat that a little bit if you'd like, Jeff, but the theory is always consistent. If this is 50, it'll fall right in line, all the way in and out of the whole process. Now, you can go back to a 45. If you want to adjust that, that's fine. But to answer your question correctly, yes, it will remain that 50 degrees. By the same token, when you go back to, if this is 20 degrees, everything inside, let's tighten this down a little bit more. If you go back to a 20-degree system, and that comes out, and that's still going to go 20, that's going to go 20, and that's still going to go 20. It might look odd, but that's what happens. It stays consistent. Is that all right, guys? Okay, just my thinking, but when you get the templates, it looks, yeah, it does. You're right. They do look a bit off, which means you might have to tweak them right or left or north or south to get them to work, Jeff. Or else go back in and just handcraft a little bit of adjustment. Or if it's 50 degrees, it looks strange, maybe go down to 45, see what happens with it. I don't do that, but I use them every now and then, but I'm always adjusting as I go too. But to answer the pure answer to your question, Jeff, is yes, that'll remain 50-50 all the way through, or 20-20-20, whatever that degree is, inside and out. When you go negative or positive, it'll work the very same way. It'll stay consistent. So let me move on. Is that good? All set, Jeff? Yeah, this has been fun, guys. Hope this has been helpful. It's been very helpful for me. I need to go through this all the time and review it. It's overwhelming sometimes. So let's go back and do this. Let's just kind of wrap some things up here. Let's get rid of some of the. Let's go here. And let's go here. And let's go here. 3 circles on the ground plane. Now connect the dots. Now build it up. We'll work around it. Just try to build a little bit of a refresher course here. And how all these circles begin. If you move it around and manipulate space, and all of a sudden, look how that whole set of situations come up and really begin to move through the whole process of keeping those circles consistent and developing ground forms, new shapes, cylinders, and I'll go back and explain this in a moment. But as you come forward in this thing, look what begins to happen. Now you come out of this and begin to spine this thing. All of a sudden, you've got this whole new approach. A little bit of an architectural complex. I won't take much more time here, but I just want to show you the difference often and how this begins to function. I'll stop right there. I think you get the point here. Look how it all works together. Now, every one of those circles, that whole complex, that dumb little sketch, 10 minutes of silent stock, and boom. No. Cameron, it's just followed along with your last car sketch, and it's amazing how easy it is to form a perspective when using these techniques. That's great, Cam North. That's really cool. But again, this is a pretty rough sketch here, guys. But you see what happens here? Every one of those circles. If I go back in and frame, I don't want to mess this up for you all, but I just want to really, I need to do this a little bit more clarified here. Let's get more impact in this thing. So we'll just keep that as some foliage here and not really detail an awful lot here. I just want to give it a little bit of a softscape around this thing and get it all started here. So if we go into this and we actually open this up and come out of that center line, there's all kinds of things you can do with this thing. Let me just do this. Let me tighten this up so you can see what we're after here. All these things, all these shapes started with the understanding of how circles work. Now, let me clarify what I meant there. What I should have said is this. It's still a mystery to me. I'm still learning, just like you are. It's incredible to me how much expanse there is in this whole understanding of just using these geometry pieces to be creative with it. But let me just, and for purposes of understanding it, look at this. Here's the ground base. Here's the ground base. Here's the ground base. There's the base. There's the base. There's the base. Notice every one of these circles. This is the base in here. If I come back through this again, notice every one of those circles are a product of understanding what those faces are doing from a very simple thing that we always ignore, the face of a cube, getting that to work. If you incline it, it's the same process. You change gears again, it's all going to connect. Just doesn't really, all of it, it's just incredible how it all begins to function. So let me stop there for a moment. I hope I didn't go too quickly there, but what I wanted to do is to go from the very complicated things, for example, 3 phases today in the stream. Introduce the principle. Explain why it works, and then show some applications. I hope this has been helpful to you guys. It's the same set of circumstances. Every one of these planes is this bad little sketch, this little loose thumbnail sketch, has told us how to build these forms as a result of understanding. Let's just isolate this. It's geometry 1, face of a plane, or cube rather. Geometry 2, face of a cube on the ground plane. Geometry 3, inclined plane. Another inclined plane. Down below, another inclined plane. Off the face of a cube. Again, over here, face of a cube on an incline, down the ground. Every one of those faces are just taking that face of that cube and beginning to really just rotate it around and begin to move it at will and develop a system of thinking here that just becomes absolutely drop dead awesome. And last but not least, let's just do this for a second here. But let's do this. Let's put it on to practice by saying, what if I did this? There it is. Simple little product sketch going through the same process, gang. How it all begins to relate, no matter what your discipline is, it all begins to apply accordingly. So let me stop right there for a moment and just to get your feedback on certain things we've gone through here today. And I hope this has really been helpful to you as much fun as I have had putting it together for you. So anybody, any questions at all? In wrapping it up here, Jeff, Cam North, Jip, anybody, please feel free, guys. I really appreciate your patience being through the process, going with me here today. Really, really helpful, incredibly helpful. So anybody at all, be great. It's a tremendous honor to be a part of the process here, and I really appreciate your patience here and working with me on this very sensitive element called circles and perspective, and defy the rumors that we're always hearing about these ellipse things. I mean, and I think we get rid of that. All of a sudden, you start to open things up. And Cam North, I'm really pleased to hear that you followed along with that little fast car sketch and begin to apply the same set of principles and it worked for you. That's great news. That's terrific news. Wishing you all the very best. So, Jeff, anybody, Chip, Cam North, anything closing here? Very good. Thanks, Chip. And, well, let's do this, gang. Let's kind of go back. I want to show you one last little theme here, and then just a little sketch here. Just, again, this is how it all begins to open things up. Look at the difference. All that geometry is a result of a simple thing. Circle in 1 point, or pardon me, 2 point here, and then 2 point here. 1 point there, 2 point here. Look how the variation in themes here. No matter where you go with it, everything we did here today. Let me just kind of get these organized here for a moment. Everything we did here today is a result. All of this stuff here produced all that stuff there. And it's just a simple matter of just going through the whole process of being able to understand what the whole system is and dealing with circles. Oh, a question here. I just had a request. Currently a student in landscape design, thinking about going to landscape architecture. Was wondering if you could do a little demo in the future about drawing planting. Yeah, absolutely, no problem at all. No problem at all to do that, Cam. I'll make a note to myself. In fact, if you want to do me a favor, drop me a note on my website or on my email address at jim@drcontrast.com and outline what you want to go. We'll go through some soft sculpture and get into some planting and trees and the like. Happy to do that for you, Cam North, not a problem. And Jeff Marcus, 911, great stuff. It's always good to have you on board, Jeff, and a lot of respect for you. I wish you all the very best and take care of yourself. You as well, Chip. Thanks so much for being a loyal follower of this little gabby old guy here. A lot of fun, and I just hope this has been a real revelation for you as much as it has been for me. Hey, Victoria, how you doing, Doctor? 07, got it. Hey, cool. It's good to have you on board again, Stuart. So we wrap it up here for today, and I won't make much. Just a quick review. Start with a basic introduction. How it all works, major minor axis, how to put it 1 and 2 points together, and then do a little bit of application. I'm seeing how those majors and minors work. Page 3, going back into some little substance work about changing the paradigm, inclining some planes, going to cones and letting it all work as well. Sketch number 4, getting into some actual mechanics to disprove the fact that it's not an ellipse, it's a circle, and how that came about. So that was another little exercise we did. Then using the whole platform base to go in and start to really, hey, I'm fired. No, you're not. You're doing good. Coming back in, showing how the platform works to get those, especially in transportation design. If your lead circles are 30, your backdrop is going to go 20. You go back in space to a maximum width of 60 to 65 inches. That's going to go from 30 degrees to 40 degrees. It opens up quite a bit. As you go back behind it, that's 30 degrees. You're almost in the same plane of reference. And again, using how did I find that HUD? By using an inclined plane in perspective, using again, face of a cube, dropping it at an angle, and finding the major and the minor, and dropping that circle in place. So it gave me the real accurate round. Really cool. So very cool. That was another little exercise we did. Then last we did this dumb little architectural piece where all of a sudden we open things up to show you how those planes begin to work. If you understand and begin to master however you see it, neat stuff. You can start to open it up, expand it, and try to change the incline. And last but not least, a page full of just examples of how this whole thing begins to open up doors in terms of developing new geometry, shape, and form. So again, so appreciative of all of you taking the time today. Drop me online at jim@drcontrast.com. Be happy to help any way I can. And also, I really appreciate them. If you understand, if you enjoy the following here and what we're doing on Twitch, I really hopefully noise it out to your friends. I love to build my audience. Let them know I'm active on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Really interesting to see everybody. I like to join the audience here and build it. It'd be great to have that process. And again, please take a moment. Those of you, for example, maybe Cam North might be interested. Go to my website at drcontrast.com. There's a drawing program there that might be of some interest to you, and let me know how you feel about that. So please, all of you, visit that, build the audience, spread the word that I'm on, that I'm live on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and then maybe some schedule changes coming up, and we'll keep you posted on that. And in closing here, I always make this a very, very valid point. I sincerely respect all of you taking the time to join me today. It's always fun to be part of the process, and believe me, it's just you never know. You take the chance of going to very fundamental stuff like this, you might just kind of freeze some individuals, but I think it liberates us, and I think that's a great part about getting the basic fundamental science of how this stuff works together. The more you understand it, the more you begin to express your creativity. And last but not least, I always end up with this, and I sincerely mean it. Never forget to remember to dare to be great, because you are. Thanks very much, gang. Have a great weekend, and take care. Look forward to seeing you next week. Take care.